All right, welcome everybody to our first EdgeX Open Hackathon webinar. If you're not familiar with the hackathon, we will be having an event in Chicago the first week of October, so October 7th and 8th, on EdgeX Foundry and building solutions for retail use cases. Just going to start off with the standard Linux Foundation antitrust policy, and to let everybody know that this webinar is being recorded and will be published after the event. So please don't post any company confidential information in the chat or the questions window. Give everybody a minute to read that. And we will post this slide deck also on the website after the presentation is done. All right, so the purpose of this call is to give everybody an overview of what the EdgeX Open Hackathon is, why we're doing it, and how it's going to be run. I have with me Jason Shepard from Dell Technologies and Brad Quirion from Intel. And my name is Michael Hall. I work for the Linux Foundation as a developer advocate. We're going to go ahead and just give background on the others. Jason, do you want to give an introduction to yourself?
Sure. Hey, everybody. So, yeah, Jason Shepard. So I'm CTO for IoT and Edge at Dell Technologies. Actually, I've gotten the EdgeX Foundry started with a small team about 4 years ago, and we seeded it with the Linux Foundation. It's just really cool to see the growth in the community. And then with the 1.0 release, with the Edinburgh release about a little bit over a month ago, we've wanted to do hackathons for some time, but just kind of felt like we needed to get to that first sort of kind of commercial ready, 1.0 release. And with that, of course, this is now the inaugural hackathon, official hackathon for EdgeX, and we want to make sure that it's done in valued areas and whatnot. We'll talk a little bit more in the background about the background when we get to it here in a second. But yeah, definitely thanks for joining, and look forward to the event.
Thanks, Jason. Brad, tell us a little bit about you.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Brad Quirion. I run a small software architecture team at Intel and work for our retail banking, hospitality, and education division, part of our Internet of Things group. And for EdgeX, I'm the chair of the Vertical Solutions Working Group. So the projects that are looking at market adoptions, use cases, feature requests, everything we want and need to do to be successful in particular market segments.
Thank you, Brad. All right, so once again, this call is going to be about the hackathon itself and getting you prepared to participate in that. There will be a little bit of technical getting started at the end just to make sure that you are ready to hit the ground running. But for additional information about edgexfoundry.org, we have some getting started and quick start guides there for you. All right, so we're going to start it off with some background about the event with Jason.
Cool. And can you guys hear me okay? Just to be sure, I'm calling in from Belgium from the Open Networking Summit. But
Yep,
your audio
sounds all right. Okay, good. Yeah, so this is the first event. The idea behind this is we kind of talked as a community is that this will be the first of a series, basically franchise, this EdgeX Open concept across different industries. Retail, we think is an area that has a lot of opportunity, of course, to transform how retailers are serving their customers in kind of brick and mortar stores, as well as bridging more and more into homes, of course, linking to web and mobile and all that. And we'll talk about the use cases here in a second. But while this one's focused on retail, we'll do future ones, focused in other areas like manufacturing, energy, oil and gas, smart cities, you name it. It's happening in a handful of weeks in Chicago. Really cool that, it's sponsored by Linux Foundation. It's tied to LF Edge. There's an initiative called the Open Retail Initiative that we had started, Intel and Dell and a number of other companies have started around how do we build more kind of baseline solutions that help retailers enable new use cases and become more competitive and innovative and whatnot without having to reinvent all the basics. So Open Retail Initiative is actually work manifested in the working group that Brad leads within EdgeX. A lot of that work happens there. Also great that we've got the Retail Industry Leaders Association backing this event. So RILA is a trade association for retailers. So as it shows on the slide here, the link for the registration and a lot of stuff around how do you get kind of familiar with EdgeX and the training behind that. And of course, there's lots of conversation happening on the Slack channel. This is really about how do we drive customer valued solutions. Using EdgeX as that unifying framework. This middleware framework that brings together value add from sponsors, other open projects. I mean, this is really about driving outcomes, but using EdgeX as that unifying element as part of an ecosystem. So if you go to the next slide, we'll get into a couple more details. So basically the way it works is we'll set it up, get started kind of first thing on that Monday. You have the registration and kind of folks getting set up with their teams. We'll have some announcements and kind of a welcome portion of the event. Hackathon begins. We've organized a whiskey tasting for that evening, just kind of build more of a team building aspect. There's a dinner and some additional refreshments and whatnot. But then we've also had the idea, kind of building on this whole notion of community, open source and community. We know that there's a number of musicians in the community. I'm a musician myself, so we had this idea of doing the EdgeX Open Mic jam session. So we'll have kind of like a community thing. We'll go a slide on that here in a bit, and then we'll kind of close up for the day, and then for the returning the next day. If you go to the next slide. Basically, this is just continuing to work, and then we'll kind of announce how the presentations will be consumed. So basically, the developer teams will be creating their solutions. They'll pick one of the use cases that we'll talk about next. They'll be encouraged to use sponsored content, but at the same time can bring other tools. We'll talk through kind of how the judging works and some of the criteria there, which does motivate folks to use certain things or do certain things. But and then basically the participants will be meeting with the judges midday. They'll do kind of a quick overview, a quick pitch on what their solution is, why they think it's valuable to retailers, how they integrated stuff, et cetera. And then the judging will occur, and then we'll have an awards ceremony and kind of a closing ceremony. And so, kind of things will progress through the course of these 2 days. It's definitely promises to be a fun event and a good way to learn about EdgeX, learn about, these different solutions, kind of meet peers in the industry, and maybe develop some new relationships and partnerships and the like. So next slide, and I'm sure we'll do some Q&A at the tail end of this webinar, should there be any questions. But
yeah, and if anybody has any questions, you should be able to ask it in the webinar window. There's a dedicated place to ask questions, and we will get to all of them at the end of the presentation.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So the use cases. So we want to make sure that this is valuable to retailers, and we have some end user retailers that will be there. We've got different technology providers. We've got I'm sure we'll see some students and whatnot. It's kind of come one, come all. But let's focus on value for this industry. So kind of quickly walk through the use cases we've selected. So it's kind of three ones, topic areas, and then one sort of wild card. So advanced loss prevention. So obviously there's been surveillance used in retail or for safety and security for some time, but there's this new trend where you basically see computer vision, so kind of AI models being used to correlate what's happening at the point of sale system with telemetry from other sensors. So say I'm looking at the point of sale system and I see that thing looks like a stereo, but it rang up like a lamp or a pack of gum, because there is cases where people swap price tags and whatnot, or they kind of scan one thing but they actually move something else, and so this is all about how can I correlate computer vision based events with telemetry from different sensors, RFID tags, maybe you've got tags labeled on merchandise, and then how do I tie that into a point of sale system where if you triage all of these events happening at one time, you've got a much better chance of making sure that people aren't tampering with the system or trying to steal something. So, interesting kind of use case there. And, so we've got obviously a lot of opportunity to kind of innovate around that topic. Second one now introduces this concept of still fusing together both kind of beacon technologies, things around energy and lighting systems, perhaps, computer vision models that can do demographics for customers, maybe walking through a brick and mortar store, but also potentially start leveraging individual identity. Now, of course, this starts getting into a different conversation around privacy, but there's a trend in retail where people are like, hey, it's called like experiential shopping centers, where it's like, I will give up a little bit of my identity, or privacy if I get value. There's kind of like the notion of Amazon Go stores where I walk in and I can get, stuff and kind of walk out. Or maybe I want to go into a store and have recommendations for clothing or whatnot, or just kind of more of a personalized experience overall, even the lighting systems or whatever. So anything kind of around, when there's value, I will be willing to give up a little bit of my privacy to get a more personalized experience. Is that second use case. Third one is this notion of logistics, warehousing. How do I kind of correlate scanners, data from sensors, maybe it's RFID scanners. We're seeing a trend out in the market where folks are even using drones to fly around and scan packages, maybe after hours, do warehouse scans and whatnot. So this is all around that correlation in supply chain scenario, making sure that you have the right stock. And then the last one is basically, like I said, wild card, open category. If someone chooses to pick this one as a team, no problem. Of course, just want to make sure that it's something that would be deemed useful for an end user retailer, because that does come into play in the criteria at the end. But you're free to choose any one of the four and really kind of innovate within that. And we'll walk through kind of that criterion here in a minute. But I think that's it for me, and we'll get to questions as we go.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
Pass it on.
All right. Now to get a little bit more into the logistics of the event once we're on the ground, I'm going to hand it over to Brad.
All right, thank you. By the way, I just saw a question get asked in the chat window. There is a questions tab that can track all the open questions for the Q&A section. So it's a fun question around drones, and so I want to make sure we do answer that before the end of the webinar. All right, so thanks, Jason. Thanks, Michael. So judging criteria. So it is a judged event, and there are prizes. What we're going to do when we went over the agenda, we saw there's kind of a Q&A period in the early afternoon where judges and teams get to interact. And then there will be a pencils down moment right when the judging begins. I think that was around 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And you'll have an equal amount of time per team. So we have the time, we have to see how many teams there are, and we'll divide that up so everybody gets the same amount of time. And we'll ask that everybody stop working so that we can all enjoy the demos and presentations during the judging slot. So we've broken the judging into a few categories. We're going to have guest judges from the industry that will be our judges looking over everyone's presentations. The first section is around creativity. So out of a 100-point scale, 30 points will be for creativity. And this, these are subjective, and the judges will have their own take on it. But this is to try to show, what is the out-of-the-box thinking? What are we doing to try something new here? We will have ingredients available at the, and will be announced the day of the event. And this is where, if you're able to incorporate the surprise ingredients in your solution, you can get extra marks from the judges. The next section is around the impact, viability, and usefulness. And, this is more a judgment of perceived market value, right? That you've been able to persuade the judges that the solution, it's fun to be creative in the first section, but this is where, it's practical and we can see how it can be useful in the market, and that would benefit a retailer utilizing the solution. So that's the section where that'll be judged. And then in the third section, it's kind of a simplicity. So this is an elegance category. So judges get to look and see that, it's a well-designed, well-thought-out solution. And that simple means scalable, simple means deployable. So I think that's where usability and other factors will be taken into consideration. And then we have 2 5-point categories. We do have 5 points to be awarded based on how much work was done at the event, right? And so the point is that, starting today, anybody can start studying EdgeX Foundry, right? And some folks will already have experience even prior to this webinar. Folks can start to practice and play and experiment and do whatever they want and come into the event. A lot of folks will come to the event and they'll just start working the day of. We want to encourage participation in whatever way that folks can attend. But in the spirit of the hackathon, where folks show up and they really get something put together under time pressure, co-working, using the resources around them, adopting things provided at the hackathon, this is where you can get a 5-point judgment based on how much was done, at the event under pressure and all the normal joy of a hackathon setting. And then finally, 5 points will be awarded to just judging of the presentation. And that's the formal pitch. How do we do? How'd it look? How'd it come off? Was it clean and functioning, or were we stumbling, bumbling, and the restarting demos 3 times during the presentation, right? So this is just a little 5 points to try to award on clean, well delivered pitches during the judging section. All right, so that's the overview of the criteria. Now, if there are questions, we can get to that in the Q&A section. And we do have 3 prizes right now. So as planned, we're going to have a 5,000, 2,500, and 1,250 prizes. They'll be awarded as a check meant to be distributed amongst team members, right? And I think, interesting thing about first place, which distinguishes itself from second and third place, is that at a future trade event, we want to be able to include your demo in the Linux Foundation Edge booth at a trade show as an example of what can be built with EdgeX and supporting the concept of Edge, right? So this is a chance to have booth passes and for your project to be on display, a chance for a really broad audience to see it, come through and ask questions about it. And so a little bit of cash, to make the contest worth winning, and then a shot at some real publicity through trade show exhibition with an LF Edge booth presence. I think that's it. This, these are cash prizes. There are contest rules to go with it. We've worked very carefully to try to lay this out and make sure that it's a fun experience for everybody. But it's also, carefully designed so that everybody has a fair shot in the contest and in winning the prizes.
And of course, Brad, this Jason, the ultimate prize is bragging rights. I've won the EdgeX Open.
The inaugural EdgeX Open, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And to become the defenders for all the challengers that will come in subsequent events.
That's right.
And there are subsequent events planned, so
that's right. So, Michael, you want me to continue with this slide, right? Right. Okay. So
yes,
when you arrive at the event, so it'll be Monday. The event is a Monday and a Tuesday. The event organizers will be on site over the weekend preparing everything, so that when you arrive on Monday, every team will have at least one functioning workstation. And we'll be providing these from a number of sponsors and contributors, but presume that you'll have the equivalent of a PC. It'll be loaded with Conical's Ubuntu 18.04. We'll have Docker and some related utilities installed, and we'll have a number of pre-installed developer utilities like VS Code, Golang, Golang, Git, Postman, and other tools that are useful when you're developing API-based applications and around use cases with EdgeX. We'll have monitor, keyboard, mouse. We'll have a router, so you'll have a private subnet or a private network for your anything you want to connect behind your network. But these will also be connected to the classroom because we're going to have simulators and event generators that are pushing data to all teams simultaneously, so that every workstation, if they want to subscribe to events coming from shared devices at the front of the room or simulators we have in the front of the room, everybody can receive a live stream to those events. But the point is we want everybody to be able to sit down and very quickly have a working station that's consistent for all teams. You're welcome to use your own laptops. You're welcome to use any equipment that you bring yourself. You are responsible for the logistics of bringing your own equipment and getting it home. We've had teams ask if they can bring their own peripherals, their own accessory devices that they want to integrate, and the answer is yes. So if you have a particular, barcode scanner, thermal printer, something that you want to incorporate because of a vision that you've already formed, absolutely you're welcome to bring those things and use them for yourself. We also intend to have additional devices, the surprise ingredient we mentioned during the judging, but also we'll have shared devices that are retail centric that people can borrow from at the event. When you sit down, everything should be functional, and we'll have a getting started guide as well as a Git repo that will contain resources to accelerate your work during the hackathon. So we'll have those instructions available. We also intend to have as much of this posted on the event website and announced through the Slack channel pre-event. So as soon as those Git repos are being populated, we'll announce it saying, hey, there's a new addition to the repo. Go ahead and do a Git pull and get the new sample project, the new document that's describing what to do. And in the meantime, between now and then, use the Slack channel to get any pressing questions. If you want to explore ideas, if you want to seek some help or get some feedback. Slack channel is meant to be a space where both the event organizers and participants are sharing ideas and sharing questions and support up to the event and through the event.
And the specific Slack channel we have is called EdgeX Open. So once you get logged in to the Slack instance, you can search for it and find it there. Yeah. Yes.
And the one thing I would add as well, here is, the beauty of EdgeX, of course, being platform independent, is that if you do choose to do pre-work, you can do it on whatever system that you might have available. It could be a maker board, you name it. And then if you want to use some of the systems provided, when you get there, then it can be a quick port. You just want to go ahead and look at the types of systems that are being provided in the prep materials, so that that the I/O that you're going to need there, the physical transport is going to be there for whatever sensors you may connect and whatnot. But otherwise, from a transportability standpoint, you could kind of work on whatever you want and port on site.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we should probably clarify is the developer workstations are meant to give you a starting point so that all teams have the same resources to get started. But if you want to take advantage of these other systems, if you want to bring your own system, you're welcome to go as far off the path as you want. For example, EdgeX is system and architecture independent. You can run EdgeX on Windows, you can run it on Linux, you can run it on Intel, you can run it on ARM platforms. So what we start off with is just something to ease the team's entry into the contest, but you can go anywhere you want when it comes time for judging and demo and whatever that solution you want.
And that really kind of follows the overall EdgeX Foundry philosophy, right? We provide the basic foundation for what you need to build, and then anything that you want to do above and beyond that, you can do.
That's right.
Exactly. Cool.
All right. So as mentioned, we will be providing some workstations that already have the software preloaded, but to help you get started before the event, just some quick instructions here. Most of the software will be installed on our boxes using the snap packaging format, and we do have an EdgeX Foundry snap package. So if you are on a modern version of Ubuntu or some other Linux distro that has snap enabled on it, you can install it very easily. Just type snap install EdgeX Foundry in your command line, and it will download and install that and start the services. You can verify that those services are running with the snap services command. And when you do that, you'll see all of the different EdgeX Foundry microservices listed there individually. Some of them are enabled by default, some of them aren't. And you can use the snap command again to turn those on and off however you would like. In addition to snaps, we also provide Docker images. They're all published on Docker Hub. And we have a Docker Compose file in GitHub that has the latest versions of those containers and how to connect them all together. And that makes it easy to launch an instance using Docker. You just use Docker Compose up, and it will start all of the individual containers for you. And once again, you can verify those with the Docker Compose PS command. And again, you'll see that it'll start the default services for you, and there are additional services in the Compose file that you can enable individually if you want. And then you can test all of the APIs. All of the EdgeX Foundry services talk to each other using REST APIs. So you can make sure that it's all up and running there to get you started. And once again, we provide a lot of documentation on docs.edgexfoundry.org that will help you, once you get it up and running, to learn more about EdgeX and how to use it and how to incorporate it into your own service. Now, for the hackathon, it's kind of open. You can do whatever it is that you want to support your solution. Two of the main aspects that we see people wanting to extend EdgeX on are the device side and the application side. So if you have a device that you want to connect to EdgeX Foundry, you can use one of our existing device services. We support a number of standard protocols already and provide device services that will be able to control devices that are using those protocols. If one of our device services does not fit your needs, you can also create your own. We provide a C and a Go SDK that make it really easy to start a new device service project. So you'll need to go download those, start off your new project, and then the only part you have to add is the communication-specific bits to it to talk to your protocol or directly to your device, however it's connected. You will also need to create a device profile, and in EdgeX, device profiles are what describe what the device's capabilities are, both what data you can read off of it and what commands you can send to actuate the device. Once you define the device profile, it's just a matter of adding a device that uses that profile. You can do this in the configuration file of your device service. If you already know what devices are going to be, this makes it real easy to bootstrap that information. And you can even add auto events, which will schedule readings from your device so that you don't have to pull it somewhere else. And then, as we said, we're going to provide some EdgeX Foundry instances. So if you're running your device service separate, you'll just need to configure that to point to the instances we provide or wherever you want to run EdgeX if you're going to run your own instance. As I said, the two main areas are devices and applications. Applications are anything that is processing the data after EdgeX does its handling. So this could be something in your data center. This could be something in the cloud. This could even be something that's just on a higher level device right there on your edge. Again, we provide some existing services for exporting data. So we support HTTP and MQTT out of the box. So if you have an application that can listen to either of those protocols, you should be all set to go. If you need something more than that, again, we provide an SDK for application functions. And these will handle the data processing for you. And all you have to do is add in whatever specific code you need to talk to your application and do any additional data transformations that you want to do. And again, we provide some utility functions that do various filtering, compression, encryption already for you. You can configure how your application function gets triggered. We've got documentation on that, but you'll need to define that. And again, just like the device services, you'll need to configure it to point to the EdgeX Foundry instance that you are going to be connecting through. So that's just a real quick way to get you started and give you an idea of what work you'll need to do in order to integrate with the EdgeX Foundry. Once again, go to docs.edgexfoundry.org to learn more about it and dive a little bit deeper into the nitty-gritty of implementing this.
And then to add to what Michael just shared, so tying back to the day of the event, what will be provided. The instructions that are event specific, again, will show how we can get some data feeds through the MQTT device service in there, and that'll serve as another guide to utilizing the MQTT device service as one of the ways that you can pull in data. And I think we're also attempting to have a pre-release version of the configurable app service there, but I don't think I can be quoted on that just yet. But that is being developed for a future release of EdgeX that allows you to have application side data handling, data export functions without having to code. You can do it through configuration files. So fingers crossed we'll be able to have that as one of the team resources available at the event.
Yep, and as Brad said, that's being developed for a future version of EdgeX, but it's compatible with the current released version, which is 1.0, codenamed Edinburgh. So we will try and get that available so that people can use it for the hackathon. All right, and once again, we will be having an EdgeX Open Mic Night. We do have some musicians already planning on being there. So if you are a musician, feel free to bring your instruments, and we'll all get together and have a nice jam session. Jason, is there anything you want to talk about here?
Yeah, no, just basically we'll have a PA, and as we mentioned, we already know several folks who've done this kind of stuff at some different events. Actually, one of the technical steering committee meetings a few times ago in Edinburgh, we did an open mic night. Tony Estre from Canonical and myself and some others went down to the open mic night, and so that's kind of the idea was born of this and some other stuff. So yeah, if you have some music, if you have some instruments, bring them. There's a note on the bottom, around like if you want to have something shipped, address can be provided. Figure we'll put a song list on the wiki, just short list, so that way hey, we're going to at least do these ones, so that if you want to come and play along, sing along, or whatever, you kind of know what maybe a baseline to expect. But otherwise, bring your own song. It'll kind of be sort of like an open mic in a way. But yeah, it's kind of another way to build on the community in addition to the team building event, the dinner, and all that. So it's, make it interesting and keep it fun, and the whole event we think will be a really fun time. In addition to a great way to go develop solutions and learn about EdgeX, etc.
All right, now we've come to the Q&A portion of the event. So if you haven't already, please ask your questions in the Q&A window.
Michael, would you like me to read the questions for you?
Get to them.
So Michael, are you able to see the questions?
Yes, please, because I'm just like I don't get a list of attendees. I'm not getting a list of the questions.
Okay.
No, I can't see them, so I'll need you to read that.
We've got we got 3 questions in the Q&A window, and we've got 3 questions in the chat window. So let me hit the chat window first. An easy one. Will we be sharing the slides from the webinar?
Yes, we will. So on the lfedge.org website, where we have the information about the event and links to register, we will be putting a link to the slide deck up there. And you can also ask for it in the EdgeX Open channel on Slack, and I'll get you the link to it.
And then you're recording the webinar, so presumably that'll be posted alongside the slides.
Yep. Yep. Okay. It takes a little while for Zoom to process the video, so that might be later today before that's posted.
Okay. All right. So next question. Should we share our code after hackathon to the EdgeX repos? And
so for the hackathon, we are not requiring they be open source. Of course, we like open source, and we encourage you to make your contributions open source. And if it's something that you think should be in EdgeX Foundry itself, we definitely encourage you to offer that contribution up. It does need to go through the appropriate working group and TSC decisions before it actually gets added to the project. But we do encourage it. It's not required for the hackathon.
Yeah, in fact.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, Jason. You and I were speaking over each other.
Yeah. Sure. Sorry. I would add. Definitely. You exactly what Michael said. Encourage but not required. If there's code that you develop that you think can turn into a commercial offer or whatever, keep it to yourself. Source. Of course, you're sharing ideas and out in the open. But best way to protect IP is to not share it. But at the same time, always love to see code being proposed to go in, and it would have to go through the approvals. And then just be aware that any code that ultimately gets approved to be, officially brought into EdgeX has to be Apache 2 license. And so just kind of plan accordingly if you plan to make a contribution. But that's just a personal choice.
Yeah, and we will have several representatives at the event from our working groups. So if you have something that you want to contribute, you can start that conversation in Chicago and find out what the requirements are and what the process is.
All right. Next question from the chat window. Now we're up to 4 questions in the regular window, so hold on for those. If we'll be provided with new devices as the mystery ingredient, will we be provided with the device profile configuration as well? And I can take a crack at the answer on that one if you want.
Yes, please.
Okay, so the motivation of the mystery ingredient is just to provide a little bit of dynamic challenge for participants in the weekend of the event, right? So that come in, there's no chance to do pre-work, and that there's a kind of a surprise thing that all teams would have to be, if they choose to go for that challenge, would be face to deal with together. So the goal is not to give somebody an ingredient that is so hard to consume, it consumes the entire time of the weekend. So we would definitely be providing the right resources to make that ingredient consumable the day of the event. And whether it's a device configuration, or device profile, it kind of depends what that mystery ingredient is going to be.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly. I echo that. It's whatever we choose, we'll make sure that it's not so difficult to do. It doesn't take a lot of time. So, providing a device profile, or even if we don't provide a device profile, make it sure that it's something that would be very easily done in a way that can be good as well. But the good point is the old Iron Chef the secret ingredient component will not be a time suck.
That's right. Okay, thank you. And now let's go to the Q&A tab. We got 4 questions.
And it's not going to be something totally weird. Like you're not going to get some strange jellyfish or something you got to add to it.
Here's your COBOL driver.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the Q&A tab. Jason, this one's for you. Question: will we be provided with drones?
Well, so the drones was actually initially, I thought it would be cool to have. We've got to talk about, how do we, so the answer, I don't think we're going to provide drones. I would personally say, if you wanted to bring one, that's probably okay, but we also have to go look at the legal, implications with drones flying around and all that. But, it's definitely a trend. And so having that, kind of component, even if we just do simulated data and kind of talk to about how that can be part of the solution, but we do have to kind of make sure that things are safe in the environment. So know that you will not be provided with drones, but let's talk about whether it makes sense, and what how also we keep things safe, in a confined space with other people around.
And I think as part of a presentation, a judge could be reasonable.
And if you can't fly the drone, you can always just walk it around.
Yeah, I think what Michael and I were probably saying the same thing is that there could be a proxy for what a drone would be, right? If you really wanted to take on a computer vision task, which could be quite challenging in itself, and say this is what a drone looking at some products would would be doing, you could take that on. Or I think judges would be reasonable and recognize that, here's what a drone would recognize after images are processed. Here's the kind of data we'd be receiving, and here's how EdgeX would be consuming that, as if it were receiving data from a drone. So all are valid, and it's up to each team to decide, the risk reward on how much they want to go for in actual development.
Yeah, you could just walk around the room holding a handheld scanner and making a buzzing sound. So then you're good.
I think Jason will be doing that, so you can join in.
I will do it the whole time. Yes.
The buzzing sound is definitely required, though.
Yeah, no, to make it realistic, of course. Cool. Next one. Go ahead.
Okay, next one. What might we want to connect to the router? Do people show up with hardware? And that is completely discretionary. So one of the reasons we have the router is because we presume, a lot of teams will show up with notebook computers, and they want to have easy access to their own EdgeX, gateway that's running on the dev workstation. You may show up with some of your own network connected peripherals that either something your company works on and you want to incorporate into your project. So it's a little hard to say, but we're guessing that's going to boil down to other compute equipment. For example, if you want to incorporate one of the gateways provided, that would be a network attach, and so you could attach a network gateway, an edge gateway to the router and connect it to your development workstation. So it's a open answer because I really don't know, but we would guess it'd be other developers' workstations, notebooks, or other network connected peripherals that you want to incorporate.
We're trying not to add any requirements to what your solution has to be, because in an actual retail environment, you're not going to have arbitrary restrictions. So as long as it's a realistic use case, then it'll be allowed.
And the second part of that question was, do people show up with hardware? And that's discretionary as well. So we feel that we're going to try to stock the event with the basics of what everybody needs, and simulators for some of the things that would be too difficult to bring into an enclosed space like this. If you want to bring your own, if you really want to use your own laptop, you're far more proficient on your own laptop, and you really don't need the monitor, keyboard, mouse, and PC that's being provided as a hackathon. You're welcome to bring it. Not required. Total discretion. Okay.
And people can ship equipment to the TechNexus venue. Is that correct, Brad?
Yes, they can. So good question. And I think we probably failed to mention that in the logistics time, TechNexus is actually closed on the weekends. So if you are going to ship something, if it's something you don't want to ship to your hotel, you don't want to bring, on the airplane, and you want to ship ahead, make sure that it's going to arrive on Friday or before of the event. Otherwise, if they try to deliver it over the weekend, it could be a challenge because the doors are locked, and it might be late Monday afternoon when the delivery guy finally gets to the event venue. So if you do want to ship something on your own, make sure it arrives the week before the event, and be prepared to have a shipping label already generated, so that you can have your own device, your own boxes labeled and ready for pickup or at the conclusion of the event. So you're responsible for your own logistics for anything that you want to bring on your own. Okay, related question, what kind of retail-centric devices do we get access to on site? This is an answer we can't give a concrete answer for it as of today. We're still pulling together what those would be. But what we're trying to achieve are things like barcode scanners, payment devices if we can, thermal printers, things that would be typical at a point of sale. And additionally, as we mentioned, like in the drone question, what are some of the data feeds that we would be seeing in a modern retail environment? And these would be data feeds coming off of RFID scanners, data feeds coming out of a POS, and others. So we're going to do our best to have a selection of common peripherals. And at this point, I can't confirm what will and won't be there. So if there is something critical to your use case that you can envision, definitely try to incorporate bringing your own. And then we'll also have as many simulators as we can with various data feeds. That would be typical in a retail environment. So there would be at least a stand-in for a device that we don't happen to have in the room.
And we anticipate having, so like Brett said, if you want something in particular, definitely plan on bringing it. We'll update the wiki and whatnot with any specific devices that are going to be provided. You can imagine, kind of things like Groves type sensors, just sort of like general sensors, certainly are readily used in these types of use cases, but then more specific retail things like point of sale and scanners and RFID and beacons and things like that. And then of course, from the sponsors, we've got, HP and Dell hardware. Intel's got a number of tools they're bringing. ITech has a commercial version of EdgeX and some tools. Deep Vision is going to be providing some of their AI tools. They literally have a cloud-based API for image recognition, so that can be a handy thing to be used in several of these use cases that require computer vision. And then in Zedata and IoTM, we'll have tools available for kind of deployment and orchestration of EdgeX available at your disposal. So the key there is that you've got some of those tools available from the sponsors. You can bring some of your own stuff and kind of riff off of it from there.
Good.
And just to add, we will be providing internet connection at the event, but it's not our venue, so we can't guarantee the quality of that. So if you have something that requires a cloud component, you might want to plan on having a backup of what to do if the internet's not working right for you.
That's a good reminder. Traditional trade show demo rules: assume you don't have internet connectivity, and then hope for the best. Yeah.
Don't plan on Wi-Fi for your demo.
Yeah, but we've been to the event space. Optimistic it's going to be fine, but as Michael said, always have some insurance. Okay, last question. Is there an entry fee for the hackathon, and is there a registration deadline?
There is no entry fee.
That's correct.
As far as the registration deadline, have we set a deadline, or is it just really like the start of the event?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not sure we actually did. Now, if we actually have a hard date, and someone can recall it, then let's state it. But I think the real challenge with the registration deadline is if we get oversubscribed, we don't want people arriving and we don't have space for you. So the value of registration is making sure that we have space and resources for your team.
So Brad, can you say what the space restrictions are and how many people and teams we're taking in?
Yeah, so it's a co-working space, in the style of like a WeWork kind of thing. It's called Tech Nexus. And so we've reserved a large area of conference rooms for the event. And I believe capacity is roughly 100, and with tables set in pods, which would be useful for teams, it'll be about 15 teams will comfortably fit in the space. I just see in the chat window that Mai said it's going to, the registration deadline is October 4th. So I think October 4th is the registration deadline. Then we are trying to fill around 15 teams.
Right. And if we hit that team limit before the registration deadline, that's also going to be a deadline for us. So, if you plan on attending and you want to attend, don't wait to get your registration in.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the best advice. Yeah, basically the week after this Friday it closes October 4th.
And chat window reminded there are no walk-ins. No walk-ins are allowed. So if you're not registered, please don't walk in because we won't be able to accept you.
All right, were those all of the questions?
I think we've addressed all the questions from the Q&A tab, and I think we caught all of the questions from the chat window.
Hey, one other thing I was going to add.
Well, we timed that perfectly. We're coming up on the top of the hour.
Yeah, one other thing I was going to add real quick is, and we can put this into the resource pool, but I was talking with some folks here, with the Intel team at the Open Networking Summit, and there's a new effort called Celadon around being able to run Android apps in containers or VMs, so that this enabling stack for that. And there's a lot of apps out in kind of whether it's scanning or point of sale or whatever QR code type apps that are built with Android. We'll bring that as a seed tool, because you can then kind of use those apps and run them right in containers right next to an EdgeX deployment, for example, and then also in the same token run it right next to containers hosting computer vision models. So I think that would be a kind of a handy tool to have to tap into some existing app ecosystem stuff in the mobile space. But, yeah, so more on the Slack channel, as Michael said, hashtag EdgeX Open, and just kind of stay tuned for more details and get additional questions answered there. Anything else from the team?
I think
no, I think we've covered everything. Additional resources on the website, edgexfoundry.org and docs.edgexfoundry.org. And the three of us, as well as a number of the EdgeX developers, are in that Slack channel. So feel free to come in and ask us any questions that you have. All right. I want to thank Jason and Brad for joining me on this webinar. Thank you, everybody who attended, and for all of your great questions. And we look forward to seeing you all in Chicago. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, awesome. Have a good one.
Thank you.